Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, there was a fairly disturbing event that took place not too long ago. Unfortunately, there are a wide variety of nation states that are being manipulated into sending mercenary forces. The youth of these nation states are essentially being manipulated into going over and fighting for the Ukraine. Now, recently, there was a kid by the name of James Wilson. I believe that's what his name was. He was 17 years old at the time of his enlistment into the Ukrainian military. Now, he enlisted as a mercenary. I currently don't know the unit that he was assigned to. Possibly one of these the Ukrainian Foreign Legion type of units that exist in the ongoing conflict. But 17 years old, no prior military experience. No prior military experience. And he decides, living in England, the United Kingdom, to join up and fight for what is happening in Far Eastern Europe. Now, unfortunately, within minutes of his first mission, he is killed in battle by a Russian drone. Within minutes. He received very little training, was immediately sent to the front lines, and on his first mission, it was an allegedly resupply mission, he was killed by a Russian drone. Now the question is why is this kid, if he wants to do this, why is he not serving in the British military? Why didn't he join the British military? That's the first question. Secondly, why is England allowing its youth to be killed in the Ukraine? And believe you me, this appears to be encouraged. It does not appear to be discouraged. So again, signs up as a mercenary and unfortunately will not go beyond his teen years. Really a tragedy. Really is. The Ukrainian state, Volodymyr Zelensky, does not want to draft his own 18-year-olds. It's the grandfather war. He is willing to draft the older gentleman. But he's perfectly okay with taking 17 and 18-year-old kids from other nation states. Incredibly unfortunate. So what's happening right now in the conflict? It is a war of attrition. Right now, the Russian strategy, as I've talked about before, is designed to kill the body of the Ukrainian military. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why doesn't the Russian military target the head? Why doesn't it decapitate the leadership functionaries of the Ukrainian state? Why doesn't it do that? The reason it doesn't is because the leadership is not in the Ukraine. The head of the serpent, so to speak, does not reside in the Ukraine. In order to decapitate the head of the forces that the Russians are fighting against, they would have to attack Belgium. They would have to launch cruise missiles or hypersonic missiles against targets in Brussels. They would have to target NATO headquarters. Now, obviously, if Russia were to do that and attempt to decapitate the core leadership of what is behind this war against NATO expansion, they would have to target NATO headquarters. And unfortunately, that would lead to global war. It would lead to World War III. Right now, both parties involved would like to avoid World War III at the moment. Again, we're heading in that direction, and unfortunately, we may not be able to stop this train that is on the track, on the path to global war. So instead of decapitation, because essentially it can't right now, the Russians are looking to kill the body of the entity that it is fighting against. And that is in large the Ukrainian proxy forces and unfortunately the youth of other nation states that are being manipulated into fighting this cause. Look, they have this sense of adventure. Most kids, unfortunately, in the West are growing up without a lot of adventure. They are stuck on iPhones or playing video games. It's just a completely different lifestyle. I remember growing up, and I'm from rural Maryland, and living and growing up back in the early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, I had the ability to just leave my home, grab my shotgun, a rifle, go into the woods, hunt, shoot, do whatever I wanted, and I could do that. What I notice now is a lot of kids aren't doing that, especially the quote-unquote uninformed urbanites that are stuck in these mega suburban cities. They just can't do that. They can't do a lot of this stuff. So you have this sense of adventure that you want to fulfill, and unfortunately, this young kid chose the wrong path of adventure. What this kid should have done is join the British military, if he was able to do so. Now, with the era of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, this young kid may have not been permitted to join his nation's military. So he ends up in the Ukraine and dying within minutes of his first mission. Very unfortunately. So again, this war of attrition continues. The strategy of the Russians is to wear out and eventually kill the Ukrainian military. At a certain point, and I've talked about this before, the Ukrainian military will reach in-game status. It will not be able to recruit. You will see widespread desertion, which you are already starting to see right now. And then eventually the Ukrainian military will collapse in total. And I think that's the Russian strategy, is to see that eventual collapse. Look, the Russians are not stupid people. Some of the greatest chess players on the planet Earth, Russians. They have played out this game, and it's a game they cannot lose. They have to win. The West, on the other hand, the United States, on the other hand, if it loses this game, there's another game to play. As I talked about in my last video, the Russian perception is that if it loses this conflict, the next phase of expansion for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is into the Russian Federation proper. It can't expand any further. I mean, there's talk about possible inroads into Georgia. Maybe. But ultimately, the next phase of NATO expansion is further east, the breakup of the Russian Federation. And they've said so. There has been discussions about the fact that they believe Russia's too big and it needs to be broken up. Those discussions are underway. And that is why this war of attrition will continue. The Donbass offensive will continue. The fall of Pokrovsk will occur. And it will continue and continue and continue until the Ukrainian military simply disintegrates. And that is what is going to happen. Or at least that is the current strategy of the Russian military. Let's go over to the deep state map here real quick and look at what has transpired over the last several days again. Let's back up. And this is a very large front. I don't think the scope is really completely understood. So the main body of the Donbass offensive is a distance of 136 kilometers. Very large area. And then let's fast forward. And there we are. There you have it. So next objective for the Russian military, Pokrovsk. Obviously, Russian forces are very much content to have the Kursk salient enveloped and day in and day out shell and kill Ukrainian forces that are operating in Kursk. We continue to hear about the deployment or possible deployment of North Korean troops. Allegedly, there is another battle group of North Korean troops that are getting ready to be mobilized and then replace the division-sized element of special operations forces, these light infantry forces that the North Koreans have allegedly sent to assist and learn about modern combat on these very vicious front lines. So the reports that we're hearing is that although their tactics are somewhat old, and obviously you can absolutely see that the North Koreans have not experienced modern war. Nonetheless, the reports on the battlefield state that the North Korean troops are tenacious, fearless, and brutal. And there's a lot of them. The whole country has been indoctrinated for such a type of conflict. And ultimately, in all probability, more North Korean troops will be sent to operate and, more importantly, learn the operational art, understand how war is very much changing in terms of the use of drones and the ability to rapidly sense and shoot. And this is a learning experience for the North Koreans. But that does it for today. We will have more very, very soon. As always, thank you for joining us. More to come. Have a good day.